Welcome to episode 234 of the Shared Security Show. And joining me this week is the one and only co-host, literally, the great Kevin Johnson.
When you started to say one and only, I started laughing because of the sheer number of Kevin Johnsons that exist in the world.
This is true.
Oh, dang it. Sorry.
Yeah, you got that cough too. Woo, that's a one and only cough.
Yeah, that is definitely. COVID sucks.
Yeah. I had it as well. I think I had version 1 of COVID before we had the vaccines. So yeah. I was like, patient 0. Not by a long shot.
That China trip you did, or
yeah. It was RSA that did it. I was at RSA in San Francisco. That's right when COVID broke out. Started on the West Coast of the United States. So I fully blame RSA for getting COVID.
I would argue that we can blame RSA for lots
of everything
wrong in our industry.
I'm okay with that. Yes.
Yeah, me too.
So as our viewers on YouTube probably have seen, Scott is not here this week, and he will not be next week either. He is on vacation, so a much needed break for Mr. Scott Wright. Yeah. So we will catch him in a couple of weeks, but we still have some exciting stories to share with everyone. And the first is some news from Apple about their new lockdown mode, which will now protect users from very targeted malware and spyware that we love talking about on this show. Our friends, the NSO group, with Pegasus and those things. So this is really meant for, I'd say, people that have a very specific threat model. Would you agree, Kevin? Journalists and others?
Yeah, I want to be very clear right up front. I'm happy Apple is doing this, right? Apple has said that they're going to make effort to if it's on your phone, it's going to stay on your phone. Wasn't that the slogan they came up with? Something like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. I think that's great. I don't know how effective this is going to be. And by that, I don't mean that there's going to be security holes in it. Did you see, I read the headline. I haven't read the article yet, so I want to be very clear. I'm repeating a clickbait headline.
Thank you for disclosing that.
Yeah, well, was it? They've offered $2 million.
Yeah, as a bug bounty.
Yeah, bug bounty, $2 million if you can break lockdown mode. Now, of course, there's specifics of what you have to do and what have you. Here's the thing: lockdown mode is neat. It's cool. It's a good option. It's unusable from what I can read long term. You can't attach devices to it unless you're out of lockdown mode. Things like that. So what I see happening is people using it temporarily and then turning it off to do something, which is then going to turn around and expose them to the attack, right? And if you're looking at people who are under this level of attack, buy a flip phone.
It's a good point.
Right? I think that if you're spending that much for an iPhone, and I don't just mean cost, I mean, right?
Sure.
You're buying a smartphone because you want smartphone features. If you turn off all the smartphone features to secure yourself, it's actually better just to buy a phone that doesn't have those features. And that's where you lose me on this one. I think that what Apple's going to have to do is extend the features that work. At the very least, give me the ability with devices that are signed or certified or something like that. Like, hey, if you buy an AirPod, you can connect to the AirPods while in lockdown mode or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's stupid example. I'm driving my car. It's illegal for me to talk on my phone unless I'm using hands-free. Mm-hmm. If I'm in lockdown mode, I can't use hands-free, is my understanding. Now, I don't have an iPhone, so I have not tested this. But everything I've read says you can't connect to external devices in lockdown mode. Okay, so every time I get in my car, do I turn it off or do I just not use my phone?
Well, it says Apple devices will not accept accessory connections unless the device is unlocked. So
Right.
you have to keep it unlocked.
But
But
but is that still in lockdown mode?
right, that's a good point.
And I don't know. And maybe I'm misreading this whole thing, but the way I'm reading it is you have to unlock it, which every other thing I've read in documentation is
Yes,
more than just opening the phone when it's in
correct.
lockdown mode.
Yeah,
But maybe I'm
yeah.
wrong. And if I'm
Well,
wrong, that's great.
yeah. So I think time will tell. I mean, obviously, this is still being tested
Yeah,
because it is still in very much, I'd say, a beta. Right. This is going to be released as part of iOS 16, which is coming out, I believe, in the fall. So
I think
they
that's right.
may be making changes, and I'm sure with this bug bounty, there probably are going to be issues with it. I would assume. Um, but I agree with you, Kevin. It'll. I think you have to keep it in this mode
Yeah,
if you are one of these targeted individuals, right? And if it's really going to limit your functionality, you're better off just getting a flip phone or doing something else to kind of limit your threats. So
yeah.
we'll
But,
see.
but
I think
but
it's
I'm
good.
glad this is here because
I
right, like
agree. Completely agree that it's a good thing. And I also see. I mean, I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about that Android has some features like this as well, but this may also spur Google to also do something similar because you know how like Apple and Google like to copy off each other, one more than the other. I won't mention which one that is, but
right, yeah, no, not at all.
every hack follows the same pattern. First, hackers exploit a human error, like a leaked key or a secret left in code. They gain a foothold and then pivot, moving from one compromised system to the next. Sound familiar? Teleport breaks this cycle. Open source Teleport gives every engineer, every piece of hardware, every application an identity, replacing secrets like passwords and keys with auto-expiring identity-based certificates. The Teleport platform reduces the opportunity for human error, increasing productivity and revolutionizing security and compliance. Learn why the most visionary businesses in the world choose Teleport at goteleport.com.
You want your organization to be secure and compliant and to have a healthy culture, but your employees' lack of awareness makes you vulnerable to data theft, fraud, and compliance penalties. It's frustrating that the boring, static training content that's being used today has failed to improve employees' ability to defend against cyber attacks. At ClickArmor, we know that without using gamification, it's extremely hard to get staff to understand how to avoid threats. Our gamified simulations and challenges have provided a 50% average improvement in thousands of employees' ability to spot phishing threats. Go to clickarmor.ca/shared security to get your free gamified phishing assessment for up to 500 employees. You'll see quickly how gamified simulations can help your team be more resilient and compliant and help avoid costly ransomware and fraud incidents. Let ClickArmor help you go from being an underappreciated, stressed out fall guy to being an innovative leader who's the catalyst for greater productivity in your organization.
So let's go into our second story this week, which is hotel giant Marriott confirms yet another data breach. So this is kind of par for the course, right? With
Yeah,
Marriott,
yeah. It's at
they've
the
had
point now where it's like, yeah, whatever.
a lot of I mean, they had 2014, 2018, and as recent as 2020, they had a data breach that affected 5.2 million guests. This one is a lot smaller, where
I think saying it's a lot
20
smaller,
gigabytes of data.
except that it affected 300 to 400 people.
Correct. Yeah.
So, according to Marriott, and I've not seen anything that argues against this, right? And we
Mhm.
all know companies lie, that companies also put out information that is not completely true yet, not because they're lying, but because they don't know,
That's
right?
right.
Um, but in this case, just the way it was written up. Okay, so a staff member at a hotel fell for giving access to their computer to somebody. That person stole a bunch of data. Marriott is saying they didn't get out of that hotel, right? They didn't get onto the core network. They didn't do any of that. And there's 300 to 400 people that are being notified. What that sounds to me like is you took data off of a check-in machine, right? And
Yeah.
so the 300 or 400 people that had checked in that week or whatever, right? Their data was stolen, and the day-to-day operational data was stolen. Yeah, this sucks. I feel bad for Marriott, but I would argue that if this wasn't a Marriott, we wouldn't even be hearing about this breach, right?
That's a
Like,
good point. Yeah.
this is a, like, if this was a mom, like, we have a hotel down the street from me. It's a old building, right? It's been around for about 100 years or something like that, which I know those in Europe, 100 years is nothing. But, Florida, we have hurricanes. 100 years is big. So, and it's like a mom and pop place, right? This family owns it. They rent out rooms. If they got breached the same way, it would hit about 300 to 400 people, right?
Yeah.
And other than hearing about it in Orange Park, the chance of Cleveland knowing about it is almost non-existent, right? But it's Marriott, so we have to make a big deal about it. I'm glad we're talking about it. Please don't take this as I'm saying you shouldn't have brought it up. I'm glad we are. But I think we're at a point where this type of news does more harm than good.
Hmm.
We scare people. Like, I read it, I read the headline, and I'm like, oh damn, I just stayed at Marriott's,
Yeah.
right?
That's why I pulled it up, because I
Yeah.
also stay at Marriott properties. No problem.
And so, okay, damn it, do I have to go change my Amex? Do I have to, what do I have to do? Then I read it, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, never mind. Right? Like, I feel like this is, and I've spoken out about this before. I've complained about this to Troy Hunt and on Twitter and on this podcast. This to me is the same thing as when I've been pwned notifies you that your email was disclosed in a breach of marketing data. And then they give you this whole email about how to change your passwords and everything else like this. And it's like, that notification does more harm than good. Because my email address being disclosed is not actually a risk to me. My email is kevin@securityhouse.com. It's on so many different places that, right, like plain and simple, I'm not worried about that. And I get the idea, right? Like, oh, phishing and blah, 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 whatever. I don't care. This is the same type of thing. I think it's important to know what happened. I think it's important that Marriott disclosed it. Beyond that, whatever, people. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm more interested in the attack itself, right? Like that, social engineering was used,
Yep.
which we always talk about, but I feel that we're starting to see these types of breaches happen in smaller increments. Like, to your point, that a lot of these things just go unreported. And I think this is one of many that are happening across the world that just don't get the media attention because they're either so small or, sometimes they're not even reported to the media, depending on the situation.
You know what I think is really important to take out of this? Other than what you just said, I agree with everything you just said. I want to talk about how Marriott stopped the attack from getting bigger. Because that's the implication. I don't know that they did. The attacker might have gotten in, said screw it, and lost their connection, right? His mom took away his computer. I don't know. I know that's an exaggeration.
Well, they did find out about it.
They discovered it?
They discovered it. That's what they said.
Well, but did they discover it, or did they discover it when, because they also said they tried to be extorted.
They were extorted. Yeah.
Right. So how did you discover it? Did you discover it before you were extorted? Did you, right? Like, that's what I want to know. Did you stop this attack? Did you prevent it from spreading? How did you find it? That's what I wish was disclosed. That's what I'd like to see. Right. We talked about it. Was it last week? We talked about the HackerOne thing.
Yeah.
That's a good example of here's how we found this. Here's how we stopped it. I'd like to see Marriott do the same thing. Tell
Yeah,
us what you taught, right?
I agree. I agree. There's good and then there's bad disclosures about breaches, and
Yeah,
we always try to highlight both on this show. Like, here's the good and here's the bad, and the really really bad.
yeah,
And the ones that really don't say anything are the worst.
yeah,
So at least they are coming forward and saying it happened. But I agree with you that total transparency, like we see with HackerOne and other bigger breaches of what happened, what did the attacker do, what did they do to stop it, and of course, what are they doing now
yeah,
as a result of the breach to make sure it doesn't happen again. But we all know that they will continue to happen again,
yeah.
which is the world we live in. So our last story is a fun one to talk about, Kevin. Um, we've talked about Google Glass on this show in the past, and the
We've talked about
surveillance that
how
may have happened with Google Glass. There were signs up in Silicon Valley: do not come into this establishment if you have
yep, yep,
Google
yep,
Glass on, because it could secretly be recording everyone. Yet we live in a society where we all hold up our cell phones and are recording everything anyway,
yeah,
um,
yeah. I'm
with people's
fascinated.
knowledge.
Yeah,
Yes.
AR and VR is fascinating to me.
Oh, yeah, it is. But this company called Mojo Vision has announced the very first successful test of a smart contact lens in a human eye, which I think is pretty fascinating. So the CEO of the company released a couple videos, and he was interviewed talking about the actually really cool technology, I have to
Yeah, yeah,
admit.
yeah.
It uses the world's smallest micro LED display. It's like 1.8 microns, which is really small. I mean,
That's
that's
ridiculous. Yeah.
it's crazy.
Hey,
Um,
so I've got to ask: Did this article read like a fanboy
oh, totally.
squeeing over, like, "Ooh, this is so exciting"? And I'm not like, don't get me wrong. I feel like if I was called up and told, "Hey, we've tested this. You want to talk to this?" I'd be like, "Yes!" Ah, I would be the same way. I'm just like reading this article, like, wait, I'm not. So yeah, it's I think it's awesome. I don't wear contacts because sticking my finger in my eye freaks me out.
I wear
But I think I
contacts.
would. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I've been doing it my whole life, so
Yeah, I
you
think I
get
would
used to it.
figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I guess the reason I bring this up on the show is, this is kind of the evolution that we've been kind of talking about of Google Glass and, smart contacts. Obviously, it'll be very evident if someone is wearing these, at least right now, because of the just the technology. We'll have a link in the show notes showing the pictures in the video, but he has it in one eye, so it definitely looks like this dude's a cyborg or something. you know um but this will get better. And from a privacy perspective, right, right now it even has a 5G antenna that's within the lens, so it communicates, they say, to an external unit, which of course we know that as being probably a cell phone, right, a
Yeah,
smartphone,
yeah,
which will have an app. And I'm sure once this technology evolves, you'll be able to start recording what you see. And there may be privacy issues related to that, like we talked about. um, I think it's fascinating. I think there probably are a lot of good uses for it. I know they showed in the video cyclists, or professional competitive cyclists, that would have almost like that heads up display showing their speed, showing other data that just shows up in your eye. So I could see that, but it does seem a little bit Minority Report as well. Like we see in
yeah.
the movies.
Oh yeah, yeah. It is absolutely a mind blowing idea that you'll be able. I mean, like right off the bat, I've said this before. I have wanted a facial recognition app running on my phone tied to my glasses to let me know. Because one of the things I hate is I'm pretty good at remembering people.
Mm-hmm.
Please note that I did not say I'm good at remembering their name. Right?
Please,
Like
yes.
the sheer number of times people walk up to me and it's like, I know this person. I know them. I've known them for years. I can't tell you what their name is. Constantly. And it's like, damn it.
Yeah.
Right? I would love that. I love the idea. When the first time that I was actually in Grand Rapids, I remember it. I was walking back, I was teaching a class at WMCAT, and great group, great, amazing people, great stuff they're doing in Grand Rapids. And but I was teaching a class there, and one night went to dinner. Coming back from dinner, I got lost, which in hindsight is pretty sad because to get from dinner to my hotel was a single right turn.
Oh, jeez.
That was it, right? Like I had to walk a period down a road.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't closed, but it was right. But I literally walked straight on a line, took a right, and walked to my hotel. That's how bad I am at directions. And I pulled out my phone, and I did I'm forgetting what they call it, but it's basically where you hold your phone up and you scan the area around you, and the Google lens detects the buildings and says, "Oh, you're here.
Mm-hmm.
Go this way and take a like it's that, right?" I remember when I did that, and it was just, oh my god, we live in the future. Like this, it literally detected the buildings and matched it to a
It's
street
cool.
view. It was amazing, right? And this was years ago. The ability to have in my eye something that says, okay, you're here, go this way, this way, this way. I'm lost all the time. Man, I'm excited. So I made fun of the fanboyish nature of the article, and then I'm fanboying all over it.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
It's just the way it is, Alanis. And
Well, yes. Well, we could reach out to Mojo Vision and you could become a guinea pig, maybe, Kevin.
I could. Yeah,
and volunteer
yeah.
yourself.
I totally see this random company deciding, you know what? The one and only Kevin Johnson is
We want you to test our smart contact lens. Yes. Well, nonetheless, this will, I think, definitely be interesting to see where this evolves, and if we'll all be wearing smart contact lenses in the future. I actually see this becoming more of like a cyberpunk thing, in my opinion, where eventually we'll get to the point where we're replacing our eyeballs with smart eyeballs and implants, right?
Yeah, no issue.
That is our cyberpunk future.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Awesome.
All right. Well, that is all we have time for today. But I want to thank you, Kevin, for being the last remaining co-host to come on the show this week. Scott's still here, as you said, but thank you very much. And for all of you listening and watching the podcast on YouTube, thank you as well. And we will catch all of you next week. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, hit that like and subscribe button. To catch all the latest from the show, visit our website, sharedsecurity.net. Follow us on Twitter at SharedSec, and join our Reddit community on the Shared Security Show subreddit.